Larry Lafferty directed his final episode with Valley of the Shadow. Taking 3 bites at the apple in a row, in airing order, gave us a good sense of how this director worked, especially with a trio of very different stories that redefined how Twilight Zone was produced in Season 4. After seeing these back to back to back, I think this is my favorite one. There might be superior individual moments and definitely some stronger performances in His Image, with a more interesting location/mystery in the 30 Fathom Grave, but Charles Beaumont's second script of the season asks some important questions, which play out in a way that makes you consider a bigger picture. It's not the most visually compelling installment, and you'll either like or dislike that the characters aren't starkly good or bad. However, with the hour duration, I found it was able to build on those gray areas and even establish a decently believable romance. Valley of the Shadow is a pretty vague title, so let's shine some light on it. Newspaper reporter Philip Redfield has lost his way driving out in the country with his dog Rolly. He stops in a small town called Peaceful Valley to get some gas and find lunch. Once there, his dog hops out of his car to chase a little girl's cat. The girl becomes angry and uses a strange device to make Rolly disappear. Philip saw this happen and is naturally upset, but is also confused. The girl's father pretends to find the dog around back when he uses the same device to make the hound reappear. Grateful, yet still wanting some food since the only restaurant in town is closed, he goes to the local hotel where he meets a woman named Ellen working inside. There seems to be a budding attraction between the two, but Ellen tells him to leave since there are no vacancies and no place to grab a bite. Redfield's inquisitive nature is piqued. It's obvious she's hiding something, and the only newspaper in the lobby is from 10 years ago. Angry at how he's been treated by the townsfolk, Philip splits. He doesn't get too far, though, as his car rams into an unseen obstacle and kills Rolly. Disoriented, he's brought to a building where 3 men in suits assure him his dog is fine. One of them is the eccentric mayor of Peaceful Valley, Dorn. They question Redfield on the odd things he saw and seem to know a lot about him. The trio eventually tell him he won't be allowed to leave. When he tries to escape, Dorn uses a machine called a dissembler to place him back in a chair and explains the origins of his community. 104 years ago, a man or possible extraterrestrial being came to Peaceful Valley and bestowed on its people equations and technology that are light years beyond anything on Earth. In exchange for entrusting the town with his secrets, the people who live there can never share any knowledge with the rest of the world until it's achieved total peace. Redfield is shown some of the gadgets that they have available, including a computer that can generate anything, how the dissembler can heal grave wounds, and the original book the visitor left with all his equations inside. Philip argues that by not sharing this technology with the rest of the world, the preventable deaths of humanity are on their hands. Dorn and his associates argue that mankind is simply not ready. Mass destruction would result in releasing what they have. Philip is then given a choice to either die or join them by living the rest of his life in Peaceful Valley. I can see why people might not be a fan of this episode. It's a little hard to follow at times and is intentionally more of a moral debate than a compelling story with memorable characters. Like most other TZ episodes, this was all shot on MGM's backlot, and it's more noticeable that these locations are repeating. The dirt road surrounded by trees was just used in His Image, and the gas station area of Peaceful Valley is very recognizable from Hocus Pocus and Frisbee. This is really just because I'm watching everything so close together. I doubt most people back in 1963 noticed these things. Despite those shortcomings, I think this cast elevated the material, and the question being posed is interesting enough to warrant such an exercise. I like Ed Nelson as Philip. Usually a character in his position is a wide-eyed innocent or has clearly cruel intentions. Redfield has neither. He's a take-no-BS kind of guy who was just thrown into a really weird situation, and he doesn't stand by and let it happen to him. He immediately tries to figure out what's going on. That made him more believable. As a reporter, he's hardwired to find the truth when he smells something is off, so it all matches up. Plus, he's relatable to anyone who's gotten lost after printing out MapQuest directions. Or maybe Bugs Bunny drew that map for him.
I listened to a friend of mine. He told me I could cut a couple hours off my trip to Albuquerque by taking the back route.
Am I a stinker?
Considering how bad of a day this guy was having, I think the townies were just lucky Redfield didn't go all John Wick when that crash killed his dog.
My dog is dead.
Natalie Trundy as Ellen does a lot with subtle facial expressions and a subdued delivery. Known for her Planet of the Apes movie appearances, she was the most intriguing character to watch here. The slow development of her fondness for Philip isn't something that could have been accomplished as well in the half-hour format. Residents of Peaceful Valley are kept a very close eye on, and she's obviously suppressing her emotions throughout the show. She doesn't know how to process what she's feeling, and she tells Redfield as much in an impressive scene.
When I saw you leaving Peaceful Valley, and I've thought about you since then, Philip. Even asleep, I've thought about you, and it hurts. I don't know why, but it hurts. Do you know why? I can't make this feeling stop.
David Opatishu had a quirky delivery as Dorn. He was a fun watch opposite Nelson and represented one side of the main argument.
The same power that can be used to heal sickness can also be used to destroy the innocent.
Familiar faces include Sandy Kenyon from Odyssey of Flight 33 and The Shelter, Morgan Brittany, aka Suzanne Capito from Nightmare as a Child and later Caesar and Me, and Dabbs Greer from the previously mentioned Hocus Pocus and Frisbee. Greer plays Evans as the often vexed member of his trio. He also takes the most abuse from Philip, absorbing a badly whiffed punch and a few direct insults.
If we kill this man, in what way do we differ from the outsiders?
Well, we do it out of necessity, not out of choice.
Thank you, Adolf Hitler.
It is for the good of the world.
This was his only Zone appearance, but a pre-Star Trek James Doohan joined William Shatner, Leonard Nimoy, and later George Takei as another main TOS cast member who popped up in this series. Robert Piddick shot his first Season 4 episode to air as director of photography with this one. There wasn't much of an opportunity to do anything overly dynamic with his camera work, but there are a few noteworthy visuals. Dorn stabs Evans in the chest at one point and heals the damage by reversing the film. It's simple, but looks pretty smooth and gets the point across well. Before that, we saw Redfield crash into a force field featuring a brutal-looking effect. They used two identical cars, destroying the front end of one for the later shots. The first was chained to a tree and jerked back to create the illusion of a crash into nothing. Turns out, this effect may have been a little too realistic. Even though the car was only going 12 miles per hour, the stuntman injured himself by hitting the wheel and had to be taken into the hospital. At least it looked good. It was cool to see that shovel break against the force field outside Redfield's new house, too. An easy trick to pull off, but practicality can go a long way. Redfield chooses to live in the superficially quaint town, but sees that he's caught on the property of his new home by an invisible force field. Ellen visits him often, and a delicate bond begins to form. With next to no contact with the outside world and her emotional growth stunted, Ellen has fallen in love with Philip. She's able to drop the force field around his house and waits in his car to leave with him, but Redfield can't help himself. With no one inside the town hall, he creates a gun with their computer and steals the visitor's book of equations. Dorn and his cronies arrive to stop him, but Philip shoots them dead and drives off. Before he gets too far, he tries to confess what happened to Ellen, but she hands over the book, filled with empty pages, and brings out a device that transports him back into City Hall. Ellen, Dorn, Connolly, and Evans all explain that this was a test, and they can't trust Redfield. He's unapologetic for his actions, thinking himself in the right. Regardless, Dorn states he'll be executed, and Connolly brings out a glass bowl. It places him back to the moment when he first arrived in Peaceful Valley, and he leaves with no memory of his experience there, as a heartbroken Ellen looks on. The thesis question put forth is without a doubt the most compelling element in this script. Redfield's perspective is basically a with great power comes great responsibility stance. Peaceful Valley has the means to help humanity, but doesn't. They use their tech mostly as trinkets for convenience. There's also a personal angle on this argument that comes out during his intimate scene with Ellen.
What could the outside world have to offer that we don't have?
That's not the point, Ellen. It's what you have to offer the outside world. I mean, right now, at this very moment, thousands and thousands of people are starving. Well, you could feed them.
Nelson did well in driving that point home, and Trundy's reactions steal the sequence. You can see the effect that this all has on Ellen. Her stare of longing as Philip drives away at the end means a great deal since we heard her expound on the pain she felt when he tried to leave the first time. She didn't want to betray Redfield. Both she and Dorn were confident that Philip would make the non-violent choice. That brings us to their point of view.
The history of civilization has been written in blood.
They have all of human existence to point to, even directly mentioning the atomic bomb. Man is incapable of coexisting when the threat of mass-murdering superweapons are available. In a microcosm of this point, they bring up the fact that the first thing Philip did when he was free was create a gun and kill Dorn, Evans, and Connolly. Philip's counter is basically that the ends justify the means if the possibility was there to save millions of lives.
I did the right thing. I'd do it again.
This debate was fun to see play out in a Twilight Zone episode. Could there have been a more interesting story surrounding it? Yeah, and I do wish we could have seen more of Peaceful Valley and how its 981 residents live with their miraculous technology, but the diverse performances are pretty good and the script is trying to say something important. While it basically answers the main question by giving the opinion that humanity isn't nearly ready for what equations like these could be capable of, the other side was given some solid logic. Again, you may not be into this one. It is very different in that the themes are more important than the story and characters, but I really enjoyed this odd meditation on how we as humans should balance power and our duty to help others. It's a debate that's reflected through the twisted mirror of the Twilight Zone.
Anything wrong? No, but I saw somebody I knew, that's all.